I hid a camera in my son's car and what I saw horrified me. Last month, my son, 17, got in a mild car accident. I was immensely disappointed in him and I made that very clear. As punishment, I decided to put him in lockdown. The set rule was that he couldn't leave the house unless given permission and he wasn't allowed out of my sight. Anyway, while my son was asleep, I decided to install a camera in his car. One of those cool shiny ones that aren't noticeable unless you search for them. I planted it in an air vent at the top, leaving the vent cracked open. My son isn't the brightest, so he would never think to search his car. He would never suspect a camera. After watching his actions over the week, I determined he had gotten his act together and could leave the house again. 3 weeks had passed and there was no suspicious activity on the car cam, so I decided it would be okay to let him drive. I regretted that decision almost instantly. He bolted out of the house and hopped in the car to head to his girlfriend's house without even letting me know. I'm quite annoyed that he didn't ask for permission, but I'll let it slide this time since it's her birthday and all. I started to watch the car cam intensely. He had gotten to her house a few minutes ago and he left her birthday present in the car. I knew he would head back to the car with her and I felt sick to my stomach thinking about what they might do. The door unlocked and he stepped into the back seat with his girlfriend behind him. "Happy birthday, babe," he spoke. "I know this is a big year for you, so I got you something extra special." He gave her a kiss and handed her the box. She shook it innocently and snickered. "I wonder what's inside." She ripped off the wrapping paper only to be met with a blindfold. A blindfold? What the heck was that for? "Babe, let me put it on you. I'm gonna take you somewhere special. It's gonna be a huge surprise." He crawled to the front of the car and started driving. I recognized the path he was taking, back home. I hadn't gotten his girlfriend anything for her birthday and he knew that. Why was he bringing her here? The car crept up the driveway. "Okay, babe, are you ready?" He put it in park and hopped out, headed straight to the passenger side. He slid the blindfold off his girlfriend, who wore a sickening grin on her face. "Take my hand, let's end her together." They locked eye contact and his girlfriend slid out of her pocket. My heart suddenly dropped to my gut. Thump, 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 sharp knocking. "Mama, I'm home and I brought Brookie with me."
Story time about how I did the dirty with my student. Please TikTok, do not delete this. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Like I said, I was 6 years older than him, was 17 going on 18. So on my first day as his teacher, he would not stop staring at me. And at the end of the class, he actually handed me his phone number. I was actually shook. Coming from an abusive relationship, my ex would always talk down on me. He would tell me that I was ugly and fat, even though I was actually a fitness model when I met him, and he forced me to leave my career. So when the student gave me his number, I was really flattered. And guess what I did? I went ahead and sent him a text message. Over the next week, we actually ended up just becoming friends. We would text each other every now and then, and I could tell that he was catching feelings really fast. I know you're gonna roll your eyes, but we actually had a lot in common. After the first week, I was actually transferred over to another grade, and that's when he asked me if I wanted to go to the movies with him. When I got to the movie theater, he greeted me with a flower and a kiss on the lips. I was in shock, and we proceeded to make out the entire movie. After that, I invited him to come over to my house, and he said yes. At first, he was shy when we got there. After 10 minutes, he warmed up, and we started kissing again. At this point, I realized that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Told him to leave, but he said he wouldn't. Then he kissed me again. I did the dirty with one of my students and fell in love with him. TikTok, please do not delete this. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. After we did the dirty at my house, we were inseparable. He was always coming over to my place since he lived with his parents and I lived by myself. And he was so different from my ex. He would come over and cook me dinner. He would even help me do my laundry. 2 months later, he turned 18. This is when we told his parents about our relationship, and his parents actually loved me. And I also introduced him to my parents. Exactly a year after we met, he proposed to me. And to this day, we are married. Now here's the bad thing. People around our town started calling me a perv, and you know that other name, but he and I are so happy. And the people that called me all those names are now getting divorces. I'm still happily married and beautiful and young. You can say whatever you want in the comments, but when you're in love with someone, you just know it.
Storytime about why I will never babysit ever again. So, little background information. I was 17 and a senior in high school. And my parents were super annoyed about the fact that I hadn't had a job since I was 14. So their friends just happened to need a babysitter. So they told me that I had to do it. So fast forward, I go over there super early in the morning and the mom had already left for work. And the dad, who we're gonna call Will, he was just about to leave. And before he walked out the door, he told me that there was a list of things that needed to be done before they got home. So their daughter Autumn, who was 5 years old, she was still sleeping. And I was reading through the list and it was just normal stuff. Like nap time at 2 o'clock, no pop after 7 o'clock, that sort of stuff. And then it had an arrow pointing towards the back. And when I flipped the page over, it said, "By the way, Autumn is scared to bathe by herself, so please get a shower with her." And I was not comfortable with that, so I called my mom and I told her about it, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I flipped the page over and it said that their daughter was scared to bathe alone, so I would have to take a shower with her. And I called my mom and I told her about it. And she was like, "Well, honey, that doesn't sound that weird. Don't you remember when your little brother was scared of the toilet and we would have to take him to the bathroom and stand there with him for 20 minutes while he tried to go to the bathroom?" So I was super annoyed that she was even comparing those two situations. Because first of all, that was my little brother. Second of all, this is just freaking weird. So I told her to bring my bathing suit over, and then I did everything on the list. Fast forward, Autumn said that she really liked me, so her parents wanted me to come over and babysit again. So I did, and whenever I was setting up the shower that day, there was a stack of towels sitting on the toilet, and when I picked it up to move it, a camera fell out of the pile of towels as soon as I picked it up, and it was recording. I was really weirded out, but I wanted to show it to my mom, so Part 3 about why I will never ever ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I picked up the stack of towels and a camera that was recording fell out of it. And while I was home later that night, I was waiting for my mom to get home when I got a call from Will. And if you don't remember who that is, that's Autumn's dad. And of course I wasn't going to answer the phone because I was super weirded out and low-key scared. But then he left a voicemail. And he was like, hey, so I know you have the camera. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm gonna need it back. I can pay you whatever you want, and I would prefer that we don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes I'm just really amazed at how stupid people are because as soon as my mom got home, I showed her the camera and I let her listen to the voicemail. So my mom called over Autumn's mom. So they called the police, and Autumn's mom kept trying to call Will, but his phone was going straight to voicemail. And she was like, yeah, he begged me not to come over here whenever you called. It's been a week since this happened, and Autumn's dad is currently running from the cops.
I was in class on Zoom. I wanted to go to sleep, honestly, because like when I'm tired, I go to sleep. I end up falling asleep and then class ends and everyone starts leaving the class except me because I was like in a whole other universe at this point. I was dreaming, I was flying. At this point, me and the teacher are alone in the call. This is the best part. Then the teacher starts talking to me and he's like, Samantha, wake up. Samantha, please. Samantha, you have another class. He woke me up, but I was half awake, so I didn't really know what was going on. So I thought it was my brother waking me up, and I straight up yelled. I was like, shut up, you fat booger. And so then I realized, oh shit, I just called my teacher a fat booger. And now he scheduled a parent conference. I'm going on Monday, so I'm really excited.
So for the first time in a really long time, I actually had something scary happen to me last night. So I was up really late because my boyfriend's in Vegas and their time difference is 2 hours behind. And he goes to bed really late. So for the past few days, I've been staying up till 4 a.m. until he falls asleep. So last night I decided I wanted to get some food, a late night snack. And at this point, I think it's like 2 a.m. And in my basement, I hear some rumbling and fumbling. But nobody's down there. Everybody's asleep. I don't have any pets. My dog's dead. I don't have any pets. So I'm in the kitchen listening. And my kitchen is right here and like the stairs to the basement is right there. And like my house is low key empty so you could hear everything. And I start hearing little whispers. A little. So I'm sitting there eating my snack and I hear that shit. And I pause the YouTube video I was watching. And I start hearing footsteps come upstairs. So I sat in my backyard for the rest of the night. Up until like 3 a.m. and then I went inside and went to bed.
Am I wrong for wearing a wedding dress to a wedding? So this girl I've been friends with for a few years recently got engaged. A week ago, I got a DM from her saying she was having a small costume party to celebrate her getting engaged. So I asked if there was a theme and she said there wasn't. So I'm a cosplayer, so I had a lot of choices. So I thought it'd be really funny to go to an engagement party as a corpse bride. When I arrived at the house yesterday, everything seemed completely normal. A few people complimented my costume and I was having so much fun. After about 10 minutes, my friend's fiance walked out in a black tuxedo and told everyone that this was actually their wedding. Apparently my friend saw a video of someone else doing this and she wanted to do the same. He asked us all then to go to the backyard so that the ceremony could begin. At that point, I went straight up to him. I asked if I should quickly go home, change my outfit and come back before the ceremony even started. He told me it was absolutely fine considering that I didn't know it was a wedding. So I trusted him and I just followed everybody outside. They got married and everything seemed good. So the reception was at the house, so everyone just walked back inside and picked up where we left off. I kept trying to talk to my friend and celebrate with her, but she kept making excuses not to talk to me. I assumed it was because she was just tired and, you know, it was such a big day. And I thought maybe she just wanted some space and alone time. I decided just not to bother her after that and the party soon ended. So about half an hour after I got home, my phone started blowing up with notifications. It was my friend and she was cussing me out saying that I ruined her wedding day. I was obviously really confused and asked, what did I do? And that only made her even more angry. She told me that it was basic knowledge not to wear a wedding dress to someone else's wedding day. I reminded her that I did not know that it was a wedding. And I said, I asked your now husband if he wanted me to go home and change, and he said that it was absolutely fine. So she didn't respond to that, but then I got a text from the husband asking why I would tell her that he said it was absolutely fine not to change. And I was like, babe, you were the one that told me it was fine. And then he says that I should have changed anyway. And now, of course, it's my fault that the two of them are fighting over this. I tried texting and saying that I was sorry and that if I'd have known, I obviously wouldn't have done this. But I woke up today to find that her and her husband had blocked me on everything. So what do you think?
Storytime about my extremely creepy neighbors. So a little background information, I was 12 years old and I was in 6th grade. And my family and I lived in a really small town where everyone knew everyone. But our new neighbors had been building their house next to us for the past 4 years. And finally, when they were done with the house, this house was huge. I mean, probably because there were like 8 people moving into the house. There was the mom, the dad, 4 kids, and their grandparents. So like 8 people. But I was super excited because I was like, okay, this is awesome. I get to meet some new friends. But after 2 weeks of not seeing anybody playing in the backyard or anybody on the school bus, I started to think that their family was super fucking weird. And everyone in our neighborhood liked to gossip, and everyone was saying how they barely see the people who had just moved in. So my mom decided to take one for the team and make some brownies, take them over to the house, and I ended up going with her. So we go up to the house, we knock on the door, and one of the kids came and opened the door, but the dad ran over and grabbed him, like for part 2. Part 2 about my extremely creepy neighbors. So like I said, my mom and I took some brownies over there and one of the kids opened the door, and when he opened the door, he had a bunch of bruises all over his body. The dad came running over and ripped his son from the door and slammed the door in our faces, and all you could hear was him screaming at his son. So my mom and I went to walk away before the door opened, and he was like, sorry, my son knows better than to open the door to strangers. He took the brownies, and then I asked him if I could have a sleepover with one of his daughters, and he was super hesitant at first, but he said that I could only have a sleepover with her if it was at my house and not theirs, which my mom was completely fine with anyways, because she thought that it was a little bit weird that his son had bruises covering his whole body. So that night when she came over to sleep over my house, I asked her how her brother got all those bruises all over his body, and she said that he just fell down some stairs. But after that, we became best friends, and we would literally hang out like 5 times a week until the one day I knocked on their door to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my super creepy neighbors. So like I said, I became best friends with their daughter, but the one day I went over her house to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. And when I asked when she would be back, he was like, she went to go live with her mom, so probably never. Which was super weird because she never mentioned that she had another mom. So fast forward 2 months, my family and I are sitting around the fire pit when we hear someone scream help. But we weren't sure if that's what we were actually hearing because it was so quiet, and then all of a sudden we heard someone banging on my neighbor's basement door. You know those metal doors that people usually have outside of their house that lead down basement steps? Yeah, well, that's where the banging was coming from. So my dad hopped over the fence to see if that's where the screaming was coming from also. And then not even a minute later, my dad hopped back over the fence and it looked like he saw a ghost, but he ran inside, called 911. Because I was so young, the only thing my parents told me about that whole situation was that the girl that I was friends with was still alive and her parents were keeping her in the basement along with 2 of her other siblings. But then we also found out that they weren't even her real parents. They were kidnapped at the hospital when they were born.